Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for being here. And thank you very much to the San Sebastian Film Festival, these marvelous, luxurious, almost a luxury hosts here at San Sebastian. Here, Dolores Heredia should be sitting here, but is the president of FIACINE, of the Ibero-American Federation of Film Academies. However, in Mexico, as you know, there's been quite a tragic situation, and she had to stay there. I'm here on behalf and representing the Spanish Film Academy, we are vice presidents of FIACINE. FIACINE, as I was saying, is the Ibero-American Federation of Film Academies, recently created on the 14th of March this year, after 3 years of lots of things what we've done to try to, and working upon it, we finally constituted the Federation, and it's an honor and a pleasure that this is our first activity. The first activity, this is our debut here in San Sebastian, so we'll remember the first time we were in San Sebastian, and you will always be marvelous for it. And it's the first time presiding this and being here talking to you makes it special. We're all excited. I'll give the floor to Maria Fernandez Céspedes from Colombia, because there are 9 countries that are represented so far. As I said, it's the first activity that FIACINE is carrying out, and the activity is addressed and is directed towards the struggle, study, work, whatever you want to call it, in order to achieve gender equality in cinema. We were thinking that there are very few women behind the camera in all different positions, and on the other hand, we addressed that in front, what we see on the screen, what you can see on the film in the movie theaters doesn't really pay justice truly to women, and it sets up stereotypes and it reproduces women or shows women that undoubtedly don't represent us. We understand to a great extent it's because we're absent in the storyline as creators of those stories, and therefore that's why we have the interest in working, we women, in that story as is fair and logical. It's something that's so elementary and so difficult to achieve, so that we can understand it as being difficult. So therefore, I'm going to put my glasses on because I've got a script that I have to follow now. Okay, so as I was saying, this first activity was the Forum of Ibero-American Women, and we've got together yesterday, and I want to thank Anna Serner, who is the director of the Swedish Film Institute in Sweden. She's a crack. She's really good, by the way. She knows what she's doing. She's great. She has managed in 3 years to achieve parity, equality. She'll explain more things later on, but that's the headline, okay? Since 2012 to 2015, 26% director women have achieved 50%. She's going to tell us the secret to that success now. And as I was saying, the activity, what it does is to speak to Anna Serner and for her to meet with her what are the keys to achieve the figures that they've achieved, that equality. And with political will and a budget, we can achieve it, but she will give us the finer details in a moment. And then we've had a second part where a series of women have got together around a table, and we have discussed and debated the situation of women in the Ibero-American films. And I want to thank, on that panel, we had people represented from the Basque government, Human Network, the ICAA, CIMA, and Cuadernos de Cine, so that there was a representation of very interesting people that had a lot to contribute to that meeting. And we discussed this, as I was saying, not for too long because it's a long subject. We could talk about this a long time. But we have concluded 2 very precise elements that I'm going to explain to you now, and then I'll give the floor to Maria Fernanda Céspedes. But once we've analyzed the situation of women in Ibero-American films behind the camera, we were able to see, and this is that the absence is painful and is quite clamorous at the same time. There are many less than that there should be, and she will tell us the details, but I would like to say we've noticed that there are very few women, and therefore, and I'm going to the conclusions now, that's why I got a bit lost, because I'm doing a lot of ellipses here, Rocío, as you may well understand. Rocío says for me to be very clear, so I'm very pending on what she told me to do. Okay, so I'm going to tell you, these are the conclusions we got together after the meeting with Anna. We discussed the situation of women in Ibero-American film, and we established two big objectives. They're small, big for us, but small for mankind, shall we say, or humanity. Okay, first of all, there was two. The first is to count the amount of women that are in film, to know how many truly are there and what they do, and then secondly, make those women visible. That is to say, in Ibero-American countries, in each member country said, in these film academies should set up a website, or each member or all of them together, where we can make those women visible that have been in cinema and film, those that started, those that are here now, and those that are still working. So therefore, we are aware of our limitations, we are aware of the situation that we're in, we're starting up, basically, and to start off with, the truth is, to operate and transform this reality, what we've got to do now is to know what that reality is, and that's that initial step that we address from the outset, to know our situation in Ibero-America, what happens in Ibero-America, and to show it to the rest of the world. Those are the two objectives that FIACINE has set for itself, and this is a path which has just started here in San Sebastian, but unfortunately it's a path will take a long time until we achieve what we want to achieve, but we slowly but surely will set up certain landmarks. As the federation is all Ibero-America, we're going to work in the different countries, and our meetings are held in those different countries, so therefore our mechanism is to address these objectives, set the objective in the next meeting, how much we've achieved in the next meeting, another objective, and let's finish off the one we had beforehand, and we'll set up a chain of objectives, really. And I always say that I hope my granddaughter doesn't finish this. I don't have a granddaughter yet, she's not born yet, but nevertheless, I hope that my granddaughter can dedicate herself to something else, who knows, but let's hope we can achieve this. So therefore, as I was saying, did I do it okay, Rocío? Yes, good, very well, it was all quite clear. I'm going to give the floor now to Maria Fernanda, General Director of FIACINE and member of the Academy of Colombian Film. Good afternoon to all of you. Thank you very much to all of the people that are here today, this afternoon, and above all, something that we were talking about in yesterday's meeting, and that is, and I want to tell you, we're not only sitting, us three are sitting down here, there are 9 countries from Ibero-America that form part of FIACINE. 9 Ibero-American academies make up FIACINE, and all of the work to recognize this and achieve the objectives is done through these 9 academies. So therefore, that's Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, Ecuador, Spain, Mexico, Paraguay, Portugal and Venezuela, and the Chilean Association of Producers. Thanks to the work of all of these countries and these academies is how we can present to you the figures that we have. And as Susana said, to achieve objectives and actions, specific actions, the main thing is to recognize who we are and what is our situation and how it stands at present. So therefore we started with a total of the academies that I've just mentioned, 3,718 members at an Ibero-American level, of which 31% are women of these 9 Ibero-American academies. In directing, 18% of these 3,718 members of academies are women. In the specialty of producers, 27% of us are women. In screenplay writers, of the 3,718, 22% are women. DOP, directors of photography, 7% of us are women. Art director, 43% of us are women. Sound, live sound, we're 7% of these 3,718. Original music score, 7%. Speciality in editing, 22%. specialty of in acting, which is where we've got where we're more got higher parity. We've got 51%, and this is bearing in mind the Ibero-American academies that I've mentioned. But the first thing was to know how we were how we stand as an industry. We carried an analysis, thanks to all the figures of all these analyses of these academies, of all the films that were premiered in 2016, and the total, including Chile in these 10 countries, 798 Ibero-American films were premiered in 2016, and the idea was to get to know how many women directors that we have of those 798 films that were premiered. 10% of these 798 films that were fiction films, the directors are women, and documentary 21%. So therefore, as we can see and realize that we have always known, or many times we were thinking that we had a parity in our countries, but for a few years back, if you had thought about Colombia, talked me about Colombia, and I said, oh, we're 50-50, but the figures are completely different, aren't they? So therefore, this is where our objectives have been established with FIACINE, with the Federation. That is to link all of these academies, and not only the academies, but to link all of the countries in Ibero-America to give greater visibility to women. So therefore, it's important that we have these figures in mind, because part of our objectives for our following meeting, and as Anna is going to tell us in a few moments, some of the tricks that they've used, which have been marvelous in her country, these are our objectives to achieve this with our federation. Okay, now let's give the floor now to Anna.
So thank you very much, and I'm really excited to be here. Things has happened really fast in the last period of years since I started my position in the Swedish Film Institute in 2011. I started off already having been what they usually called me behind my back, the bitch, working with gender equality wherever I was. And being a kind of official bitch. I always got the questions from the newspapers, and I was the one that people asked questions about gender equality. So starting off in the Swedish Film Institute, and of course realizing what low numbers we had. As you heard before, it was 26% when I started off the work over the period of 2006 and 2012. And I had been talking so much, I got really tired of my own voice already 20 years ago. So I made a decision to stop talk and to start act. And let's talk about the action. And they can be right and they can be wrong. But if we are unhappy with the situation in any area, you have to decide where do you want to go, how long time can it take, and what is the strategy to get there? And a strategy can never be only words. It needs to be actions, because there is no one giving away power for free, and no one that willingly say, I don't want to make my film, let's have a woman doing it instead. So you really need to have an action, and I made an action plan which was very simple, actually. We met 5 of the most common arguments why it wasn't gender equal. And these arguments are global, and it's within any industry, but in the film industry as well. And the first argument is always, there aren't any good women enough. We can't find them for giving funding support. We can't find them to distribute. We can't find them to the festivals because they don't have enough quality. And this has been the case for all history. Actually, in 1910, you know, when film industry started, the first long feature film, which I learned in film school anyways, was H.W. Griffith, The Birth of a Nation, which is not true. The first long feature was made by a woman called Lois Weber, and if you search for her on the web, you can't find her because history erased her. The only way to find her, because I've really tried in all European online magazines, is to search for her husband's name, and she is mentioned in one of the sentences as his talented wife. And she made over 100 long feature films. And the men by that time were more into the cinematography or the more technical part. Women took care of the softish people directing. This has changed, we all know that. But what we have made is exactly what you have in your plan is to make all women visible. So we have started a site, NordicWomeninFilm.com, where we have digged out all females in the positions of cinematography, editing, script writing, producing, and directing from 1895 up to now, and we will continue adding on new names. And we are writing the context and explaining what kind of works these women have been doing. And it's amazing what an impact that site has had already. It's only Sweden so far, because my neighboring Nordic countries, they were more in for words than actions. So as long as we were only talking about it, they were with me. But then when I said, now you have to start paying, they said it wasn't a priority any longer. So I am now trying to convince them to follow me. The next argument you hear is she is not experienced enough. She hasn't made any long features, or only one maybe. And the research shows that men are picked on potential and women on experience. And there are so many cases that really shows that this is what's happening. And it's actually one Swedish film here this year, Borg McEnroe, which opened the Toronto Film Festival. It's in Swedish measures a big budget film. It's directed fantastically by a man. His name is Janos Metz. He never made a long feature before. He only made a documentary. It wasn't any documentary. It was Armadillo that was a very famous documentary. But the day that women don't have to have made a lot of long features to get this prestigious high-budget film script in his hands or her hands, that will be the day when we are gender equal. So what we did was, as well, what you have been talking about, we put together established film directors, women, with less established, and we gave them knowledge about structure and how discrimination works, and they got to exchange experience in order to get the less experienced women to get strategies how to pass the gatekeepers, the selecting committees, or the distributors, or the producers, or the exhibitors, everyone that always have more faith in that men are able to have a quality film than women. The third argument is she doesn't want to. Yeah, but we asked so many questions. She's always saying no. And partly this is true, and I really wanted to know why. So we made studies on film schools and pre-film schools. And it turns out basically that young women that says that they want to become film directors, they hear from the environment, are you crazy? Do you realize how hard it is? What competition? How will you take care of your children? Can you ever have a family? You have to travel over weekends and months sometimes. Are you sure you have it? Are you sure you're willing to lose everything of that? While the young men saying, I want to become a film director, gets to hear from the environment, wow, are you sure? Do you know what a hard competition it is? It's really tough. But what the hell, you go? What do you have to lose? You can do it. And if that is what you always get to hear in different aspects, of course, there are more women that tend to not believing there is money for them. And when they see the numbers that you have been telling us, of course, how much effort are you willing to spend to have a 10% chance to get the money? Is it worth it? While the men have 90% chance. Of course, they are bolder and more courageous and have a better self-esteem. So we have to work in all levels. And I have control over our money, and we are the biggest and most important film fund in Sweden, so we affect all films. The fourth argument is, you know, that is quota going for 50-50, and then we lose quality. We won't do quota because then there is no quality. And that is saying that there is the quality films and then there are the quota films. That's why we have not done quota, but I started off my job saying immediately that I'm not afraid of quota because I'm so convinced that women have exactly the same ability to make good films as the men. And I'm going to share, because I think this is very revealing of what is actually the case, what our unconscious bias tell us when it comes to quality. You know, all these selecting committees saying, yeah, but we know quality when we see it, and I know quality because I've been in the business for so long, and you can sense it, and it's all of those bullshit, actually, because we are used to recognize quality which we expect to be quality, which means that when the Boston Symphony Orchestra in 1999 was going to get more women into the orchestra, they made the audition anonymously. So they had the jury sitting there, a curtain, and the musicians walking in and playing their little song, walking out, and the jury never saw who it was. And then the jury picked, and they picked more men, which was very disappointing. And then you can explain it as the women haven't got the time to rehearse because they take care of the family, or men maybe have the biological reason of longer fingers so they reach better, or maybe the DNA to be more musical, or what would the actual explanation be? But before going into those deeper studies, they redid the audition, and this time they put a thick carpet on the floor so they couldn't determine who was walking. Same jury, same musicians, this time 50-50. For the first time, they actually picked quality and not gender. So knowing that, we know that we really have to define what we mean with quality. So counting will help us look again, not look into the same patterns. Tell the production companies that you show us women. You may not find the quality, but maybe we will. And we have said that the quality is 3 words. That is the arguments for getting the funding. It's film ideas, because we fund the ideas, with the potential of being relevant, which is as important if it's a comedy and it's not reflecting the today's societies or the today's issues, it's not funny. And if it's an art house political movie, and if it's not on today's issues, but are still back in some issues years ago, it's not relevant and it will not hit you. So it has to be relevant whatever kind of genre it is. It has to have some kind of originality. We don't want to see the same things again. And we want to be sure it will be good. We want the craft. We want to see that if you have a new talent, that it's an experienced producer. If you have big shooting, that there are people there that really knows their business. So we know that the taxpayers' money actually becomes a film. But starting to actually talk about the films and the projects instead of the gender of the one doing the projects, it solved itself. So it took us 3 years. The fifth, I will say, we made a research as well, if there were any differences between the film industry and other industries, and the short answer is, yeah, no, there isn't. It's almost the same in all kinds of industries. So with me putting forward an action plan with me saying, I take this seriously. I'm not going for 40-60, I go for 50-50. And with me saying, and I'm not afraid of quotas. So if you don't help us, we will go for the quotas. And the numbers raised immediately from 26% to 39%. We got a greater intake of female directors, producers, and scriptwriters. And they turned out, when we started scrutinizing them with words and not gut feeling, to be really good. And I'm so happy now I can sit here and say that this year, 2016, and it's 5 years ago now, during the past 4 years, Swedish films have never been in so many international top film festivals ever. And half of the films in the festivals are made by women. We have never had as high average awards from critics overall, ever, over this period. And the top 3 films out of the top 10 average award given to films since 2000 is won by 3 female directors. So it shows that women actually do produce quality when they are allowed to. And this means as well that the rest of the filmmakers really shape up, because they know that the path to the money isn't as easy any longer. So suddenly the whole level has risen. And I think the proof we got this year, first winning Sundance with a Swedish film, winning the Palme d'Or in Cannes with a Swedish film, opening Toronto Film Festival with a Swedish film, having 3 films here, and we are now having 10 films in IDFA, the documentary festival. We won the finest animation prize in Annecy. So we have taken this small country, we are 10 million people. How come we suddenly became so good? And I think it's because we have been working with quality through gender equality. And I've been trying to talk about this for years and years and being considered, now she starts again. Now Anna is on the go again. So I was very surprised in 2015, 3 years after our launch of our action plan, when I was walking on the street in Cannes, and this woman comes up to me and says, "Can I take a selfie?" And I mean, you have been to Cannes, you know there are a lot of famous people there, so I didn't get anything. Why did she want to take a selfie? And why did she want to take a selfie with me? And there was a lot of questions. And I was like, why do you want to take a selfie? I said, because you're Anna Serner. I was like, yeah, and yeah, gender equality. I said, yeah, and how do you know? And then I came to Toronto to TIFF, and I was invited to a panel. And you know, the panels, they are like, yeah, you get an applaud if you're happy. And then they said, and then it's Anna Serner, and people were screaming. So I became a rock star, from a bitch to a rock star in like no time. And I was like, what happened here? And then I realized in 2015, on the Oscar Awards, the women started to speak out. So Kate Blanchett, when she accepted the award, she told the story how it is being a woman in the film industry. And she was followed by Patricia Arquette, Meryl Streep, Susan Sarandon, Emma Watson. And when the red carpet people starts talking, the media gets interested. And they were looking for some example of something happening. And they were desperate and ended up in Sweden, where there was an Anna Serner who actually had the power to do something. And now I can travel around the world talking about this. But the most important thing is that we are invited to sit here at the press conference at the San Sebastian. Thank you so much, José Luis, for this. And you are taking up actions, and I meet people from the Basque region that are copying our action plan. In Canada, the biggest film funds, they are going for 50-50 by 2020. Eurimage is going for the same thing. In Ireland, there is a movement right now, and I think it's amazing that we need role models to show that it's possible, and I think we really have proven that. And I now really feel that things will change. And that means that we will be seeing films in the cinemas that we actually haven't seen before. Because we've seen so many films about coming of age of young white boys mostly, or falling in love or lose someone. It's death and love through a man's perspective. And they are fantastic, and we want them, but we want the other stories as well. And if you believe that film is an important part of giving us a chance to understand ourselves, but each other and society, which I think film is the most fantastic culture phenomena, then we need to be more diverse and we need to let the new voices in. So I'm so excited to be here in 5 years' time to see, and in all festivals, to see what kinds of films we will be able to see. And I'm sure we will say that things did get better. Thank you.
Bien, ya os avisé.
I warned you, didn't I? I warned you, but I know I warned you. She was straight up. Okay, good afternoon. I'd like to ask Anna, to what extent it's important in your action plan that you've carried out in your country? Political support on behalf of the government. How is that important? Is that of fundamental importance, the support of the government? And also, the Swedish industry, could you place it, tell us what budget the Swedish cinema have, and what is the VAT in the Swedish cinema or film?
Yeah, thank you. It's a relevant question. Our budget for films, short documentaries and long feature is 34 million euros maybe. And an average Swedish film long feature is about 2.5 to 3 million euros. Of course, there is other money around us, but I would say in total, maybe we support on an average 40% of the films. So I would say that there is maybe 140 million euros in total for the films in Sweden. Of course, I come from a country that have been lucky enough or smart enough to stay out of war for 200 years. And we had a very stable government, the Social Democrats, for 40 years that could take long-term decisions, which meant that we have been a prosperous country for a long time, since the Industrial Revolution, more or less, which has meant that we have been working with gender equality in Sweden for a long time. So, of course, having a government that since the 90s have been 50-50 in the ministers, and having the assignment from the government since 2000, I would say, that they want us to aim for equality. That has been sharpened along the way, and since I've been so strong about it, I would say that I influenced them to be more demanding. So now they say that everything we do should be with the eyes of equality, of gender equality and diversity. And it has, of course, helped me a lot, because the Ministry of Culture and I would say the government loves what I'm doing, because film travels, and this makes the Swedish brand travel. And we have a foreign minister and a foreign ministry that it claims to be a feministic foreign ministry. So, of course, they get a lot of help with the attractive films.
¿Lo del IVA lo quieres concretar?
VAT, Anna, the VAT tax, yes.
The VAT, we have 25% on cinema tickets since January this year. We used to have 6%, so it's a huge increase, which everyone is very upset with, because the rest of the culture is 6%. So this was a way of giving us budget, but we are not happy with the way.
¿Más preguntas?
Any further questions? Hi. My question is more what you can advise us to women workers and producers who work in film from our position. How can we help for that global change that has to take place at other higher levels? And thank you very much, by the way.
Yeah, my biggest advice for both the decision makers and like José Luis is you have to count. And if you're not counting, you're not aware of the actual problem. So being one that wants the money or being the ones without power, I would say the best thing you can do is always question. What is the numbers? What is your goal? How are you working? Be a bitch. Sorry to say. But men can be bitches too. So you can support us.
What would you do to inoculate this bitch side to our politician men? What would be your advice for that?
No, but there are all changes that someone works for will make you be a problematic bitch or he's a I mean, that goes for women and men when you point in something that is not really working. So when doing that, of course, you have to be a soft bitch sometimes, and you can't be a bitch all the times. So choose your fights carefully, but and don't piss people off. So, you know, pushing people into corners where there is no escape is no good. So rather include and try to cooperate and let them get their opinions said. So it's important to listen, to start the dialogue. And when they start to explain, they usually find out that they need to change. But it's a long way, of course. You have to be patient. And so do I. I mean, it's not like Sweden is gender equal. And it's not like I've influenced the whole industry. I've influenced our money, and our money is so important. So that's why it happened so much. But the day I quit, someone can take it away in 1 month. So it's vulnerable, and you have to be resilient and patient.
Do you think there is makes any sense to sort of look at the men quota, right? Mm-hmm. We have a men quota.
Yeah.
Of 80%, depends on the countries. In Spain is about 85%, the men quota in the film industry. I mean, do you think any legal way to go against this quota?
Yeah, that would be to demand that they only get the 50% quota. I really think the best way of doing it is to do it without the quotas. As soon as you do the quotas, it's all focused on the quota and not on the films. It's much better to educate in unconscious bias, to have ask the selecting committees, demand of the selecting committees that they actually start arguing for their votes and not only go for the ones they know or the ones that they have the gut feeling is good. I mean, we have to have higher demands now. And I think that is it's a challenge because we are very used to believe that we pick the best. And of course, the men that made the films, for example, that are shown here, not all films are great, ever, even in a top festival. But, I mean, of course, there are a lot of good men. So it's not that I say that they are bad. I just say that even they can get better. And there are women that are as good and sometimes actually better. So it's not like all men are bad. They are doing very good things. But we need to start understanding that it's the individual and not the gender that has the ability.
Ms. Henner, do you believe this model is easily exportable to countries like Spain and the rest of Ibero-American countries?
Yes, I know for sure it's easily exported to, for instance, Australia had a regional film fund in New South Wales, and I would say Australia they're very far away from Europe, so they are lacking some progressiveness. And there was this managing director, she took our action plan, copy-pasted it, and she achieved gender equality immediately as well. Then she got fired, though, and that is the problem. And Canada has done it, and Ireland has done it. But I think that the best thing, of course, is to take our action plan, and as I heard from the Basque region, the Catalan region, that they take it and get influenced by it, and then you modify it. I think the most important thing is to have a plan and actually work after the plan. But in any change management, you do plans. So it's nothing new, but it's just new in arts and culture, I would say.
¿Alguna cosa más? ¿Alguna pregunta?
Any further questions?
Bueno, pues,
well, okay. Well, if you deem, we want to reiterate, Anna, thank you very much for thank you very much for your success. Your successes are our successes. And thank you very much to the Film Festival and everyone that's made it possible to hold this meeting and all of those who have collaborated. See you next year and with better condition of women in film. Thank you very much.